Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and in this video we'll be covering a game I played in the Boston Chess Congress. This was my round 2 game, and I was playing the white pieces. Let's take a look at what happened. So, my opponent was a 1900 in this game, so I was playing white, so I opened with d4. My opponent plays g6, c4, bishop g7. So here I think my opponent's going into a King's Indian defense, or something like that. d6, knight f3, knight c6. Here I played e4. Here bishop to g4 was played, and now there is a threat against my pawn here in the center because the knight is pinned because of this bishop. So here I very simply play the move bishop to e3, and I'm willing to take on the bad pawn structure because I have to play g captures on f3, because if I play queen captures on f3, then here there's simply knight captures on d4, and this would easily be worse for me because I'm not a pawn. So instead here I have to play g takes. However, here my opponent actually plays the move e5 first. Here I play forwards with d5, and here I expected the move knight d4, jumping into this nice outpost square. I can't really take advantage of this knight's position because after something like this, I can't take back with the knight because there is a pin here. But however, here my opponent actually surprised me by playing the move knight to d7, which isn't something really common here. Here I just play bishop e2, and here I actually have a really nice threat. If my opponent plays f5, which my opponent actually did in the game, then here this is actually a massive blunder because of this very nice move, knight to g5. The reason being is that my knight can now get into the e6 square. And this e6 square is no longer protected by this light square bishop that black has, because it's locked in front of the pawn, which has moved to f5. And this bishop on g4 no longer surveys the e6 square. So this move f5 really was not good for black because, one, it also removed the f pawn from defending the e6 square. Two, it also blocked in this bishop from being able to see the e6 square as well. So here knight to g5, and there's no way to actually protect it, because if you play pawn takes, then here I can simply capture this bishop for free. And also here, if you play like f4 to reopen up the line of this bishop, then here I'll play bishop captures on g4. You can play f captures on e3, that's fine. And here I play knight e6. And after e captures on f2, here I can simply play king captures on f2, and there's no way to get to me with a check. And after your queen moves, then I can simply play knight captures on g7 with check. So let's say queen to d7 here. This is one of the variations, and after king d8, then my bishop also discovers the queen, and I can play bishop captures on d7, and this is just completely winning for me as I'm up a lot of material. However, in the game here, my opponent plays bishop captures on e2. I very simply play queen takes, and here my opponent plays queen d7, getting out of the way of this knight e6 idea. I still play knight e6, however. Here I thought my opponent would play bishop h6, which I thought would be good to try to trade off this bishop, which is a bit more active than this bishop. However, here I do have the move f4, blocking off this trade. And if you play e captures on f4, then here I can play bishop to d4 to win the rook in the corner. And if you play bishop takes, then I can very simply play bishop captures, pawn captures, and here I don't even have to capture the f4 pawn. I can play e captures on f5. If you take back like this way, then I'm pretty sure queen h5 check leads to some type of really nice continuation after knight g6, probably queen captures on f5, and there is probably some forced way through after castles, and I take the pawn on f4. So my opponent didn't actually go for this. Instead, they opted for the move king to f7, defending the bishop with the king. And here, now that the king's position has been compromised, I realize I should probably open up the position. And since there is already pawn tension here, I really don't want my opponent to play f4 and close down the position. So here I play the move e captures on f4. I calculated that you can't play g captures on f4 because this would probably lead to force mate in some way after queen to h5 check. None of the squares on the back rank are available because my knight and queen protect both of them. And if you step forward to f6, then simply bishop g5 is actually a checkmate. The queen and this bishop take away all of these squares, the knight takes away the escape square protected by the pawn, and it is kind of like a smothered mate in a sense. And alternatively, you could play knight g6 here. However, here I can simply follow up with queen captures on f5 and with another devastating attack, and I've also achieved my goal of opening up the position. So instead, knight captures on f5 was played, and here I played the move queen to f3. This was not the most accurate move. Better would have been to play the move g4, kicking out the knight immediately, And after, let's say, knight back to d7, then here I can follow up with something like knight e4, and then queen f3, and then I can smash my way through. Instead, I switch up the move order. I play queen f3 first, threatening the move g4. And here my opponent plays the move knight f6, which is another massive blunder because this allows the move g4. So here I played the move g4, attacking the knight on f5, and I calculated that the knight doesn't really have a good square that I can go to. Firstly, if the knight retreats somewhere, then I can follow up with the move g5, exploiting the fact that this knight is pinned to the king. Secondly, if my opponent plays knight to h4 to attack my queen, then here simply queen to g3 would actually end up winning this knight, as this knight is actually trapped. Both of the squares that the knight can go to, or all four, are all taken by either the queen, my pawn, or they're covered by my opponent's own pieces. You can't play knight h6 because of simply g5, and I'm winning a knight. Knight d7 has the same, knight e7, sorry, has the same purpose. Knight captures on e3, after f captures on e3. This was sort of something I was kind of concerned with, because I thought that after like h6 it was a little bit more difficult to play. However, I did realize in the game that I do have the move knight e4, basically threatening knight captures on g7. Here probably rook h to f8 would have been played to prevent this, and then I would simply probably cash in and win a rook. What my opponent did in the game was a bit similar. So after knight d4, attacking everything pretty much, my queen as well as my knight, here I simply play bishop captures on d4, e captures on d4, and here I swing my knight into e4. And now this is actually an even worse version than what I showed earlier, because my opponent's pawn isn't on h6. So 1, I'm threatening to play g5. 2, I'm threatening to play knight captures g7 followed by queen captures on f6. And 3, I can probably swing a knight into g5 as well if I really want to and find something concrete that way. In the game, my opponent played the move h6. I instantly snapped off the knight, the bishop on g7, king takes, and queen captures on f6. King to h7, and here I play queen captures on d4. You can't even take this pawn on g4 because of knight f6 check, and there's just a double discovery. 1, my knight is forking the king as well as the queen. 2, my queen is also seeing the opponent's queen on g4. Also, you can't even pin this knight because I can simply play queenside castles. This is actually what my opponent did, except my opponent brought the other rook, which is basically the same thing, because after castles, here my opponent actually has to give up even more material, because I'm threatening knight f6 check, and it's actually unstoppable. I'm going to end up winning in exchange. You still can't play queen captures on g4, because I still have knight f6 with the same idea. In fact, here we actually get to checkmate after knight h5 check. The king can move somewhere, let's say king to f7, then here after queen g7, this is actually checkmate. This pawn prevents the escape square, and the king is boxed in by its own rook. So instead here, my opponent plays rook captures on e4, seeing as knight f6 check will come, and I will either win the queen or a rook, either one. And if you move the king, let's say to a different square, this still comes with knight f6 check, and I'm still ending up winning the queen. So here rook captures e4, queen takes, and rook e8 was played. Here I just played queen to d4, just protecting this f2 pawn, and if rook to e2, then I can simply play rook h to e1. This also keeps an eye on the g4 pawn. Rook e7, rook h e1, rook f7. Here I play rook e6, bringing my rook into this nice outpost square. Here queen a4 was played. I play the move queen e4, taking control of the open file and threatening queen captures on g6 with devastating checkmate probably. Rook to g7 was played. Here I just simply play the move a3. I don't want to have any more complications, so these might not be the best moves, but I just want to protect everything I have, make sure I don't lose anything by accident. b5 was played. So here after queen to b5, I just very simply slide the king over to b1, just getting out of all the complications and making sure there are no checks to my king. Here my opponent plays queen b3. I simply slide my rook over to e1. Now I triple up on the e-file, and after queen b5, and here rook to e7, my opponent resigns the game, seeing as I'm going to be able to trade off black's rook, and probably the queen, black's queen soon after, with my tripling up on the e-file, and I'm simply up a rook, and I will end up winning the game. So quite a nice game. I would say this is like victory within like 10 moves pretty much. My opponent actually ended up blundering on like move 8 or move 9 with the knight g5 idea. And afterwards, it was relatively smooth sailing. Afterwards, just the g4, queen f3, that was a bit of a sort of move order change. But besides from that, everything was smooth sailing on afterwards. And yeah, we managed to cruise on to a very nice victory. After this game, I was actually ending up out of 2 out of 2 so far in the tournament. And yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.